Aaron Rodgers wants to play for the Jets. It only took us a few days, but we finally got some answers thanks to up-and-coming reporter Pat McAfee and the great A.J. Hawk extracting the truth out of Aaron Rodgers.
Look, sometimes you've got to go to these small, indie, niche, broadcasts and find some interesting nuggets. McAfee sitting there with his, strong TV audience of, 500,000 people watching live. Got some interesting stuff out of Aaron Rodgers.
We thought we might not. Aaron Rodgers said today's not decision day, but he's he's out in the stars somewhere basically saying, I've already made my decision.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, what is it? And he just said, I got to the point. He basically said he was going to retire. 90% retired before entering the darkness. But coming out of the darkness, want to be a Jet.
Now he wants to play for the Jets. There was some really, unhinged but interesting things said in that interview. Obviously, he hammered Adam Schefter. Schefter backed up his reporting that he told him to lose his number when he texted him. He fairly slammed Diana Rossini. Didn't he say he just didn't reply to her or something like that? But then sort of criticized the interpretation of her report as to his wish list of players, his shopping list of sign Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb, Mercedes Lewis, all these guys. But as seems to be a trend with Aaron Rodgers, he's all about just playing semantics, These were not demands. This was simply a list of guys that I think are very important glue players that happen to be presented to the New York Jets, who coincidentally have gone and signed those people. Those are not demands. They were just strongly encouraged indicators of what might lead me to playing quarterback at the Jets.
He did say Nathaniel Hackett was a reason, but yeah, all the players on the list, he didn't deny that he
but did the same
encouraged
thing,
them.
Right? Did the same thing with Hackett. It's like, love that guy, really big reason I'm signing with the Jets. But the characterization that he was hired to lure me is I don't like that at all. It's like, well, for 2 years in a row now, that's kind of been the narrative.
All right, so what does it all mean? AFC East is loaded. Rodgers is going to be officially a Jet at some point. Basically, the holdup is the Jets and the Packers figuring out compensation, as we said earlier.
And he placed the blame squarely on the shoulders of the Packers. The Green Bay is digging their heels in on this. I want to be a Jet.
Masterful job.
Obviously, the Jets are doing what they can, but Green Bay is digging their heels in on my way out the door.
I was filling the A.J. Hawk role, just sitting here silently. I was trying to,
Please keep it going. Keep it going.
Yeah.
You need if we got a cigar we can hook you up with, will that set off sprinklers and stuff?
A.J.
Yeah, there we go.
Would you get a Pulitzer? What kind of Grammy?
An Emmy?
Emmy? An Emmy.
I discovered a while ago that
Grammy.
the Pulitzer Prize is it's a self-applied for thing. They don't.
A.J. better throw his name in the hat.
That's what I'm saying. They don't comb the landscape and find the most impressive written pieces of content. You have to submit yourself for the Pulitzer. So I hope that somewhere A.J. Hawk is sending them a still video of him just smoking a cigar in silence while McAfee interviews somebody.
Just tremendous work by A.J. Hawk getting the truth out of Aaron Rodgers. So let's flip it forward. We're going to turn the page, as Pat did, look into the AFC East. You've got the Buffalo Bills, who will head into next year as one of the Super Bowl favorites, right? They still are. The Miami Dolphins, who made the playoffs last year, had a breakout season from Tua, have an incredible pass game with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mike McDaniel calling plays, just added Jalen Ramsey into the secondary, and the New York Jets adding Aaron Rodgers to a team that, if they had just had mid-level quarterback play last year, would have been in the playoffs. Their defense was fantastic. Sauce Gardner looks like the best young corner in the NFL in years. And then the Patriots.
Yeah.
So that's the AFC East.
Yeah, look, the bottom line is what we were saying all the way along when this was a possibility. The Jets should be seen as contenders now. Not contenders of the division, though that's the first hurdle. Contenders, real contenders for a Super Bowl. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL. They have a group of receivers that can make some noise. We keep thinking that, Garrett Wilson, Rookie of the Year, paired with Aaron Rodgers is an irresistible pairing. Alan Lazard coming in is a good role player in that offense. As we said in the big show today, I think it also might smooth the transition period to give Rodgers at least one guy that he trusts right away while they work on the chemistry with Garrett Wilson and whoever else gets added to that group. Their offensive line wasn't good last year, but it was beat to hell. They were rolling through players and everyone was getting banged up. It should be better this year, and they still have time to add a player or two to really solidify that group as well. You look top to bottom, when you add an Aaron Rodgers to this group, the Jets should have one of the best rosters in the NFL on paper.
They really should. I mean, they were below replacement level quarterback play last year and still a fringe playoff team for most of the season. So they really should be. I mean, you're getting growth from young players too. We're talking about guys like Garrett Wilson that were rookies, Sauce Gardner rookie. Like, they're going to get better too. Didn't lose anyone really that matters in free agency. Nathan Shepard goes to the Saints. Nice signing for him. Good depth in the interior. But they're not losing any major piece. They're just adding.
What about the mechanics of Rodgers, his contract? Burt Breer's reporting something right now that in the stroke of genius in the Packers contract with Aaron Rodgers, his $58 million option bonus can be exercised at any point between now and September 1st. So Green Bay has all the time in the world to trade Rodgers. And the Jets have only 6 draft picks. They have pick 13 and then not until 43 and 74. What's the compensation going to look like, and how does this work financially for both teams?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting what the compensation looks like from a pick standpoint, because, yes, Rodgers is owed about $60 million for 1 year. There's no guarantee. He just told us he was leaning 90% towards retiring before going into the darkness. So you're paying for maybe a 1 year, $60 million contract. I don't care how good Rodgers is, which is, obviously back-to-back MVPs before this year, but I would be surprised if it's maybe 1 first-round pick gets on the table. I don't know if is that 13? Is that a conditional 2024 pick where it becomes a first if he plays a certain amount of snaps or something like that? It's not going to be some massive package. We're not getting the Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson level compensation here.
And that feels like it probably is the holdup right now of Packers saying pick 13 and the Jets saying hell no. And the difference between that, the next pick in the 40s, is a huge jump. So that's probably the sticking point. Green Bay digging their heels in and saying we need at least pick 13 coming back, and the Jets saying, look, under no circumstances is pick 13 on the table.
You mentioned the Jets roster, Sam, and what they need to do just to compete, right? I mean, it's the Packers had a good roster last year outside of wide receiver, right? That was a good team that was supposed to last year at this time. That was the best defense Aaron Rodgers was ever going to have.
In theory, yeah.
Right? Theoretically. And it just didn't work out, which is, again, comes back to it's very difficult to bank on your defense. Our Jets fans are going to be banking on their defense too much. They were excellent last year. They took a massive step forward. I mentioned Sauce Gardner and what they were able to do. Do the Jets have enough to compete with the Bills? And not just the Bills. You're still in the AFC with the Chiefs and the Bengals and the Ravens and all these teams that are loaded. Aaron Rodgers going to a very competitive situation here in the East.
I think they do, honestly. I mean, the Bills got better. Add Connor McGovern at left guard. We add we talked about Deontay Hardy a bunch this morning, getting a tertiary weapon, but they still are not great in the trenches. If the Jets' offensive line can get healthy, can take a step, they would kind of look like Cincinnati last year in that playoff game. They could bully the Bills up front on both sides of the ball, hypothetically. Miami to a degree as well. I mean, their offensive line's gotten better. Obviously, Teron Armstead, Connor Williams, some good additions last year, but I think they are a legit contender, even with as good as the teams are in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, it makes that division now fascinating because Buffalo should be as contender as ever. Miami is really loading up to try and swing for the fences while they have Tua on the cheap deal. They're adding incredible playmakers. They now have arguably two number one corners, along with 2 number one wide receivers and everything else that's on that team. Incredibly well coached both sides of the ball. The Jets adding Aaron Rodgers. I mean, it looks initially like New England is sort of the 4th team looking up ahead at these 3 juggernauts, but theoretically that might be the best division in the NFL.
One of the factors here in the AFC year over year, when you do have Mahomes Chiefs and Burrow's Bengals and Allen's Bills and all these great teams, now Rodgers and the Jets, what does their schedule look like? The Jets are going to be playing the Falcons from the NFC South as one of their crossover games. They've got the Texans from the AFC South. They're going to be playing the NFC East, which again was better last year, of course, with the Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders there. But that could be one of the deciders in the AFC is which division gets to play the best or worst crossover teams. Looks like a mid-level type of AFC East opponent schedule, but I was hoping to see some Packers on there, but they already played last year. That's what I was hoping for. So we got some matchups. We got the Cowboys next year, Rodgers and the Cowboys. You got some interesting ones in there for sure. Eagles could be a tough one.
Yeah,
So-
I mean, schedule is always a kind of underrated element of.
Sorry
which
to
teams-
throw that out there, sight unseen.
No, I mean, schedule is always an underrated element of which teams are actually going to be good and bad, and the other element, obviously, that it's untouchable now is injuries, right? Which teams are actually going to stay healthy or not? Because that offensive line falling apart this year was a big factor. Maybe if they were better, Zach Wilson wouldn't have been as catastrophic, or Mike White wouldn't have got hurt, and the Jets actually would have made the playoffs.
I also think this might be the best group of pass catchers Rodgers has had as a whole, the depth that they have compared to what he's had in Green Bay. Maybe.
Well,
I mean, they had Marcos Valdes-Scantling, who's the MVP creator a couple years ago. They had Lazard, who's going to be in New York. And then you had Devontae Adams. We have two tight ends here who are pretty solid in New York, maybe a little bit better depth than what they had in Green Bay.
Rodgers' receiving core has tended to be very star-driven almost through the entirety of his career. He's sort of gone seamlessly, really, from number one receiver to number one receiver in sequence. Like, it kind of went, there was a little bit of crossover on occasions, and that's when he had the really good receiving cores, but it kind of went Donald Driver to Greg Jennings to Jordy Nelson to Devontae Adams, and then it stopped. There was nobody. So it's been much more, I think, number one superstar driven than a lot of other receiver groups where they have had a variety of different options and been able to go to different places. And when he's been at his very best, it's when they have had more depth, and you've had, Randall Cobb as an option that was productive and dangerous in his own right, opposite the true number one, and those kinds of things. The Jets, I think, certainly have a receiving core that leans much more to that depth and breadth than it does the one superstar, unless Garrett Wilson becomes that guy.
Do they need OBJ, though, to put him over the top? We've talked about those rumors, and they could be close there. Currently, it's Garrett Wilson and Alan Lazard. Elijah Moore still there as a potential 3. Corey Davis, we assume, gets cut.
Yeah.
CJ Uzama and Tyler Conklin, 2 tight end investments last year. Good, solid players. The depth, as we mentioned. Do they need an OBJ to put it over the top, especially if it is going to be just 1 year of Aaron Rodgers?
I think it would go a long way. At that point, then you really have depth, and if you do have some injuries, you can overcome those things. If they don't trade away pick 13, they kind of have all options at the table at that point too. Like, you're not forced to make any positional pick. You could do whatever you want at that spot, especially if you do add an OBJ and say, all right, we are set realistically at every spot. Maybe add more offensive line talent. Joe Douglas loves to add in the trenches. So, yeah, I think it would help. Look, Garrett Wilson is a legit bona fide number 1, but if you get OBJ as well, then it's like, making Lazard your number 3 when he was your number 1 in Green Bay last year, then the knockdown effect there would be huge.
Center, maybe both tackle spots, certainly right tackle. They have to figure out a starter. Left tackle is the oft-injured Mekhi Becton and Dwayne Brown getting old as a potential backup. So there's still a little bit of work to do for the Jets. There's time, but
Sure.
work to do.
So I need a conclusion, right? Aaron Rodgers is now repeating history as Brett Favre. He has become the thing that he once hated. You last long enough, you become the thing you hated the most. Brett Favre ran this game plan exactly the same way, dithered his way out of Green Bay. They got tired of him. They packed him off. He went to the Jets. A year later, he was with the Vikings. So Aaron Rodgers running this playbook to a T. The question is, does the Aaron Rodgers year, let's say a year for the moment, in New York end up better than the Brett Favre year? Which, let's remember, the Jets went 9-7 that year. It's seen as a disaster because, Favre, I think, had like 50-50 touchdown to interception ratio. Definitely wasn't good.
22-22.
Yeah.
Touchdowns and picks.
But they had a winning record. And then he went to Minnesota the subsequent year, and it looked an awful lot better. But
they started great, the 2008 Jets, and lost 4 out of their last 5.
right. So Rodgers as a Jet, better or worse than the Favre era?
It'll be better. A win better.
A win better.
10-7 instead of 9-7.
I'm going big. I think they win 12-plus games. I think this is going to be much better. Yeah, I'm high on him. And look, last year was not good for Rodgers. 2020 to 2021, he had a 94 passing grade, 7% big-time throw rate, both tops in the NFL, 2% turnover-worthy play rate. Probably the biggest difference between him and Brett Favre, limiting the negatives as well.
Yes.
He brings aboard Alan Lazard instead of who we talked about that Favre demanded or wished for.
Javon Walker.
Yeah, so I think they are a legit team.
Yeah, I mean, I will say one of the biggest differences is I don't think Aaron Rodgers has a 22 interception season in him.
Right.
Like, he just doesn't play that way.
That's 5 years for Aaron Rodgers.
Right. There's no way. There's a season where Rodgers ends up with 22 picks the way Favre did that year. Yeah, I think it goes better, but I do wonder if the sort of, however his career ends, whether it's one and done with the Jets and he retires, whether he completes the Favre cycle and ends up as the Vikings' successor to Kirk Cousins, whatever it looks like, I do kind of wonder if you're going to look back at that Jets year and be like, yeah, that didn't work out great.
Okay. I saw someone else make this point, and we do have to bring it up. He's going to be 40 years old. Mm-hmm. How much? So when Tom Brady was 40 in 2017, he won the MVP, went to the Super Bowl. He won 2 more Super Bowls in his 40s. So he went to 3 Super Bowls since turning 40 and played 6 total years till he was 45. And Brady looked as good as ever in 2020 and 21 when he was 43 and 44 years old. That had never happened in NFL history, had never even come close. And we kept saying with Brady, there was no physical decline in him.
Yep.
I think it's fair we could say the same thing about Aaron Rodgers. There's no physical decline in Rodgers. Some things looked different last year. He made some weird decisions, but never did velocity, arm strength, movement. Nothing looked like there was decline for Aaron Rodgers. 40-year-old quarterbacks through the history of the NFL, though, not a great history. So does this actually become a factor for Rodgers, or is it just, hey, he's got one last year, he'll be fine, we won't even notice?
I honestly don't think it will. I think the name of the game is pliability. I think these guys are limber. It's not about strength. It's about just protecting the joints and all that stuff. And we know Rodgers likes to protect his joints. So
I do think that
double entendre there.
That generally speaking, the age of which these quarterbacks are reaching the end is lengthening. Right? Like you think about the sort of quarterbacks that reach this kind of age in recent history. Obviously, Brady is one. Manning got to 39 and he was toast. Favre hit 40, and his problem wasn't a loss of velocity. It was the fact that when he hit 40, he became much more brittle, and the injuries that he was sustaining were now multi-week problems, not ones that were 1 week and done and back on the horse. Favre took more hits than any of these guys, so that's kind of a unique problem to him. But Breeze at 40, I think, still had it. Maybe the arm was starting to decline a little bit, but I'm pretty sure Breeze in his age 40 season was still one of his 90-plus, incredible years. And it was after that you started to see the arm just fall off a cliff. So, however, Rodgers, I don't think is going to play long enough for us to find out how long he would last. But I don't think his age 40 season is an issue at all for Rodgers.
I guess the interesting thing could be, look, he does get the ball out quickly, but we've seen with Nathaniel Hackett, initially Rodgers didn't want to run a lot of play action, do a lot of those things. He hated turning his back to the defense, not having control at the line, all that. Do they maybe tweak things a little bit because he's not going to be running away from guys as much? Better athlete than Tom Brady, always has been, probably still will be, but maybe is that how you protect him, is not doing some of those things?
Well, here's another fair question. How much was Rodgers' turnaround Matt LaFleur? Right? Everybody blamed Mike McCarthy, terrible route concepts. Mike McCarthy's the reason for Aaron Rodgers' decline. 2019, Matt LaFleur shows up. Aaron Rodgers still doesn't look great. He's good, not great. 2020 and 21, spectacular. How much of that was Matt LaFleur coming in? Even if Nathaniel Hackett was the offensive coordinator in name, we saw Hackett on his own last year with Denver and Russell Wilson. Is that actually a thing? Was Matt LaFleur the real catalyst for Aaron Rodgers turning around, even though Rodgers loves Nathaniel Hackett?
Yeah, I mean, hard to say. Hackett arrived the same time as LaFleur, right, in Green Bay, so there was never a period where Rodgers was together with LaFleur but not Hackett. The only data point we have is obviously that Hackett-Russell Wilson disaster class from last year.
All right, so there we go. I'll up my official prediction. I think it is closer to, say, 11. We'll say 11 wins. Jets will make the playoffs here. I think it's too tough in the AFC. But the real prediction, Aaron Rodgers, your 2024 Minnesota Vikings quarterback.
NFC Championship game?
NFC Championship game, game-ending interception. You got to complete the circle. You have to complete it.
Just the same stuff happening over and over again.
So Jordan Love in 15 years going on McAfee.
Already made that prediction. Demanding Christian Watson come with him. Demanding it. Aaron Rodgers, going to be a Jet.